All right, today we're diving into Malta's 2026 budget. And let me tell you, the government is framing this as one of the most ambitious plans in the country's history, all built around what they're calling a revolutionary tax cut for families. So let's break it all down and see what's really inside. Okay, just think about this for a second. What if a government suddenly rolled out the single biggest support measure for families ever in its entire history? What would that even look like? Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what Malta's 2026 budget is setting out to do. It's being presented as a truly historic moment for the Maltese people. But you might be asking, how can a small nation pull something like this off? Well, the answer really starts with the economy. First up, let's look at the economic snapshot. You see, a budget this ambitious doesn't just appear out of thin air. It has to be built on what the government is calling a very prosperous foundation. And this economic strength is basically the key that unlocks everything else. I mean, just look at these numbers. It's a stark contrast. In the first half of 2025, while the rest of the EU and the euro area were kind of chugging along at about 1.4%, Malta's economy was surging ahead at 3.1%. That's more than double the average. And it's being driven by really strong domestic demand and a booming services sector. And this is where fiscal discipline comes into play. You can see here that after the deficit hit a peak of 8.7% back in 2020, during the pandemic, it's been brought down step by step. And get this, it's projected to drop to 2.8% in 2026, which is below the EU's 3% limit, even with all this new spending. And that right there, that's the fiscal breathing room that makes the main event possible. So, with that strong economy as our backdrop, let's get to the real headliner of this budget, a historic tax cut for families, and more importantly, what it could actually mean for you. Okay, the big number here is a massive 160 million euros. That's how much this new tax cut is worth every year, aimed squarely at families with kids. We're talking about 68,000 parents who will benefit. And to give you some perspective, a previous tax cut gave people about 500 euros back on average. This new plan, it's projected to save parents around 2,400 euros each. That is a huge difference. So how does this actually work? Let's take a look at working parents with 2 or more kids. Right now, you don't pay tax on the first 13,000 euros you earn. But watch this. That number is set to absolutely skyrocket, all the way to 30,000 euros by 2028. That means by 2028, a parent making 30 grand a year will pay, wait for it, 0 income tax. Nothing. And if you have 2 parents earning that, that's a combined household income of 60,000 euros completely tax-free. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, the 2026 budget speech actually brought up this quote from 1995. It really highlights an older way of thinking, where social support was seen as something just for those in need. The government today is presenting these new measures as a complete philosophical U-turn, a shift away from that view towards much broader support for everyone. And this new way of thinking, it doesn't just stop with the tax cut. Nope. The budget is also rolling out a whole package of social measures aimed at making that social safety net much, much wider. Yeah, on top of that massive tax cut, there's another 120 million euros being pumped into social support. This time, it's for pensioners, carers, and other vulnerable groups. And this isn't just one thing, it's a whole bunch of support. We're talking a 10 euro a week bump for 100,000 pensioners. The CARES grant is going up. Lower income families get an extra 250 euros per child. There's more money for seniors who live on their own, and even better benefits for when you're sick or unemployed. It really seems to touch almost every part of the social support system. All right, so we've covered the immediate help for people's pockets, but the budget's final piece of the puzzle is all about the long game, with a clear goal of building what they're calling tomorrow's Malta. And a huge part of that future, you guessed it, technology. A cool 100 million euros is being poured into pushing Malta to the forefront of digitalization, AI, blockchain, robotics, all the future-facing stuff. This isn't just talk either. There are some really concrete steps here. They're planning a national digital identity wallet to slash red tape. There's an AI for All program to offer free tech courses to everybody, and they're doubling down on supporting startups and growing those newer sectors like esports and fintech, where Malta's already making a name for itself. And the engine driving this whole vision, from the economic growth to the social spending we've just talked about, is the Ministry for Finance. They're the ones steering the ship here. So when you take a step back, what's the big picture? The budget frames this as a fundamental shift in strategy. It's about moving beyond just traditional growth and trying to build an economy that's truly future-proof, one that's resilient, smart, and can compete on the world stage. But let's bring this all the way back down to earth. What does this actually mean for an average family? Well, the budget speech made a really bold claim. By cutting the tax burden this much, the government is essentially indirectly helping to cover most, if not all, of a family's home loan payments. It's a powerful way to connect a huge government policy to something super tangible in your daily life. So, when you put it all together, you've got this two-pronged attack: massive financial relief for families right now, and a serious investment in the technology of the future. It really leaves you with one big question. With these kinds of foundations being laid today, what will Malta actually look like in 2050?